Praise the Lord, saints and friends. This is Elder Adrian Heyman, and we're finally home. A little ordeal, maybe not as much as others, but an ordeal is an ordeal, meaning essentially, very frankly, that essentially anytime someone in your family has to go to the hospital and has to stay there overnight, it's an ordeal because you don't know what's going to happen. But God was in control. The culprit was found in terms of what was causing the issue, and now we're home. That's good. But I was thinking more about the situation that most everyone that's seen the news or been on social media about the killing of this woman in Minneapolis by an ICE officer. And of course, depending upon which side you are on, it's turned extremely political. If you're on the right, then you believe, of course, in law and order. And how dare someone tries to run over an officer, whether it's ICE, police, whatever it happens to be. You try to run someone over, and so you get what you deserve. That's from the right. From the left, the idea is that there should have been a lot more restraint on the ICE officer's side. And that's been a problem over quite a few years of law enforcement not exhibiting it, restraint, and firing first and asking questions later. But now we know that a young woman is dead. She has two children. The children do not have their biological mother anymore. Now she was married. Now some people may make this an issue too, and in some other instance, maybe I would, that she's married to a woman. But that's a life. And essentially, I don't care who you are, that's a life. And a life was taken. And that particular woman was right next to her wife or sitting in the same vehicle as the wife. And so, conceivably, someone, if he wasn't very careful, he could have also killed her too. And of course, from the officer's side, he felt that he was going to be ran over. At least that's what the story is. And because he felt he was going to be ran over, he had to defend himself. The thing, and I have several thoughts about this, not to be inflammatory, but just looking. And especially for people of the same complexion or who are darker as I. It reminds me of all of the killings by law enforcement. For whatever the reasons, always that they felt that they were in danger. Or they thought they were in a dangerous situation. The person put themselves in a very bad position. And so you heard this narrative all the time. Except in recent years, that narrative has not necessarily led to an ample excuse, so to speak. There have been people who have now been law officers who are now being incarcerated, charged, found guilty, and being incarcerated. Because the idea is that with someone that doesn't really have a weapon, then why are you shooting them? Why are you killing them? And again, for people of my complexion, we have told our children, we have been passed from us, from our parents to us, from us to our children, do not mess with the police. And sometimes I will jokingly say, assume the position, and most people know exactly what I'm talking about. Because essentially, you're told, don't do anything to antagonize a police officer. Because if you're unarmed, and even if you are armed, most likely nothing good is going to come out of it, especially for you. And you might end up being unalived, which is, of course, the ultimate punishment. So we grew up with that. And essentially, because we've always heard in the back of our voice, in the back of our minds, if you move, if you run away, if you do any sudden movements, you deserve it. Because you know what you're not supposed to do. But then again, good thinking with other people can carry guns in full view. You can, there are certain things that other people are able to do that we cannot. So, and other people really, well, what do you mean you can't get away with that? You shouldn't be getting away with it anyway. Supposed to listen to law enforcement. Can't throw your mouth out at them. And that's been beaten into our minds. Not literally, at least not anymore, but figuratively. So that we always think of now, if someone is being shot by the police, if someone's being beaten by the police, it's because they did something that antagonized the police officer. We're thinking that. And we have to keep from doing that and try to look at it objectively, because in many cases, the police are going over and above what they're supposed to be doing. And there are ways to take a situation down without having to resort to deadly force. And I don't know how many people knew that I was the subject of one of those times where, fortunately, I did comply, but I found out that guns were trained on my car. I was thinking it was a late teen, early 20s before I got married, but still, there's a young guy, driving a car, happened to match a description of another car's been in a robbery, and they stopped me. I'm here today. Thank God for that. And thank God that no one had an itchy trigger finger, but guns were pointed in my direction. So just understand that I have a little understanding of that type of situation. Now, this person who was gunned down by ICE officials, this person was not of my complexion. They were much lighter skinned, which was a big surprise that essentially an ICE officer would do that. But then again, in the us versus them mentality, I'm not saying every police officer has that, but many of them do have the us versus them. Us versus them is not just about color, but it's also about political spectrum. Are you on the left? Then you must be the enemy. And there was a lot of inflammatory language that is spoken even before then about left-wingers, or those on the left, being terrorists. And to me, that is going over and beyond a labeling. That's begin to criminalizing others just because they have a different political view. And even if they don't like you as a leader, that does not mean that you penalize them, because this country is supposed to guarantee free speech. And as long as one does not try to overthrow the government, then you are still able to speak your mind. It may be distasteful, it may not be what you like, but you can do it. So this has now taken a lot of people to choose sides. Again, some say that this woman, Mrs. Good, Mrs. Good, because she's married, that this particular person essentially should have listened to the police officers and did what the police officers were saying to do, or the ICE officers, what they were to do. And something that she was trying to ram the police officer. But remember, I did see the video. And maybe in some angles it does seem as if she's gunning the car or the vehicle at the police officer, for the ICE officer. But then I saw the wheels turn the other direction, which means that she's not trying to hit the officer. She's trying to get away. And that's something that we as a people, we do know about. Running and getting shot. Running and getting accused of fighting back when was even fighting back. So the key here is really is what was the intent of both. For Mrs. Good, you probably won't know in her mind because she cannot speak for herself anymore. Only her partner can. And of course, if you're being quieted by people calling you an agitator or a terrorist, then you're not supposed to say anything. That's an issue. That's a big issue. Because now your First Amendment speech is shut down while the other side can go on and mouth about how horrible she is and she left her children behind and did all that. And see, when we don't know the situation, I don't know the situation totally. So I'm not going to prejudge either side. But it does seem as if the evidence, the amount of evidence, is mostly with the woman who was shot. And as you go through with this, the question is whether that evidence is going to be buried or whether it's going to be presented and analyzed like any evidence should be. Now, it just so happened that not that many days earlier, there was a black man who was also shot and killed by ICE officers. The interesting thing about it is not much has been said about this young man. I believe it's a Mr. Porter. But I hear that there was at least a member or two of my own church who knew that man. And now that man is gone. But not much is said about the one who shot him or what position he was in. Was he down? Was he running? Was he pointing something at him? Was he pointing a stick? Was he getting something out of his pocket? Whatever it was, we don't know because no one is saying anything. Now, I'm not saying that the person in Minnesota, that essentially they don't deserve to have outrage because essentially anytime someone is shot and killed, whether they are innocent or not, the whole idea is that something broke down. And in many cases, law enforcement, as stressed as they are, and I know they're stressed because people want to kill them for doing their job. People want to harass them for doing their job of keeping the peace. And if it was a matter of just keeping the peace, then yes, I would be on law enforcement's side. If it was ICE was to be able to get criminals and all that stuff off the street, I'm all for that. But that's not always the case. And in those cases where it's not what would normally be correct, then we do have to make sure that the law goes through and judges the situation for what it is. Was it a justifiable homicide? Justifiable, I said. Or was it murder? Because whether you're in an officer's uniform or not, regardless of whether you are in a position of the one that upholds the law, there are certain things that you only do as a last resort. And taking the life of another person should only be as a last resort. Not a comfortable, a comfortable choice, but a last resort when nothing else can be done and people's lives are in danger. This is why I've seen chases now on TV for quite some time. They will call off a chase if it gets too dangerous because they don't want the person who they're pursuing run a red light, hit someone broadside, and now people are killed because of the reckless driving. But then they will blame the police because they were chasing them. So they're very careful about that now. But my whole point is that we have a problem. And people say, well, yeah, you have a problem. No one's respecting the law. No, people respect the law. But when a situation gets to be iffy in terms of how that particular law was enforced, and that enforcement results in death, then you have to wonder what's going on. What's taking place here? We're U.S. citizens. We're supposed to be protected, even those who are not U.S. citizens. The idea is the sanctity of life. So rather than trying to explain this away as the ruminations of a bleeding heart liberal, I'm actually quite conservative in my beliefs in terms of what we should do, how we should dress, and everything like that. I believe in God. I believe Jesus is the one that saves us. But I also believe in the rights of human beings to live, even if they've committed a crime, depending upon what they're doing. It said, and only in a last resort should someone kill someone. And people are thinking like they got a trophy. We got one on the leftists. We got one on the bleeding hearts, and now they should be, and now they better be following the law more closely. That's not a way to react to this. A life has been, now 2 have been snuffed out. 2 of them, man. I mean, these are only, I know they're not the only 2, but they're the ones that came up this week or 2 weeks ago. And we need to ask ourselves, is this really what we want? For the populace to be absolutely frightened of law enforcement, whoever they may be, whether it's police, whether it's sheriffs, whether it's marshals, whether it's FBI, whether it's ICE, whatever happens to be. Do we really want this to happen? And if not, we have to be honest about it. And if so, explain why. But we can't have this to be in a position where we're split apart when we're supposed to be together. Especially as saints of God. Especially as saints of the Most High God. God bless you.